In my last video, I looked back at Cruis'n USA for the N64. Despite the shit kicking it got from the critics at launch, I actually found it a really good fun game to play. But lots of people have told me that the sequel is even better. So I thought I'd put that to the test too. This, my friends, is Cruis'n World. Now again, before I start, I've never actually played Cruis'n World in my younger days. As I said in the previous video, I avoided Cruis'n USA because the reviews were bloody awful, and I had no intention of bothering with Cruis'n World either. The IGN review back around launch essentially said it was a slightly less shit version of Cruis'n USA, and I think that's all I bothered reading about it. So while I appreciate many of you will have played this game in your younger years, and have those rose-tinted glasses on, the same doesn't apply to me. This is my first time playing it. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Cruis'n World. By the time Cruis'n USA launched for the N64 back in December 1996, the sequel had already hit the arcades. Cruis'n World launched in November of 1996 in both sit-down cabinet and stand-up cabinets, which could be linked together for multiplayer for up to 4 players. Despite the somewhat polarising opinion on the quality of Cruis'n USA in the arcades, the original had performed really well, and the sequel took the formula and basically added a little sass to it. Increased polygon counts, improved frame rates, the introduction of new gameplay elements like boosts and drifts, and balancing your car on 2 wheels. The exploding deer from USA sadly didn't make the cut, but exploding kangaroos were added in their place. The Bill and Hillary Clinton hot tub scene on the top of the roof of the White House was also gone, but never forgotten.
And now, the president.
Replaced by a Bill and Hillary Clinton hot tub scene on the moon? Because reasons.
Now fasten your seatbelts and remember, don't inhale.
The trophy girl, if you finished first, was replaced by a different trophy girl in a different colour bikini depending on the location, although the flag girl remained the same. But away from that, it was super similar to Cruis'n USA. And while Cruis'n World did okay at the arcades, it wasn't as popular as its predecessor. Despite the critics being really unimpressed by the N64 port of Cruis'n USA, the paying public were far more enthused. After selling over 1 million units, Nintendo announced in early 1997 that Cruis'n World would also be heading to the N64, with a vague fall 1997 date announced. However, the game didn't launch in 1997, and would eventually arrive on the N64 on September 28, 1998. Almost 2 years after the console launched, and Cruis'n USA had arrived on the N64. Now, a bunch of people in the comments of my Cruis'n USA video told me that Cruis'n World was better. The consensus among many people on forums, on Reddit, on Twitter, is that Cruis'n World is better than Cruis'n USA. And do you know what? You're absolutely fucking right. Let's start first with how monumentally stupid it is. The same stupendously outrageous handling is very much back with a bang, only this time with added complexity of having to double tap the accelerator to do some nifty and utterly fucking pointless tricks. The boost in this game is one of the most pointless things that has existed in any video game ever coded. The collision detection seems to have abandoned the downright dodgy territory I mentioned in my USA video, and now seems to exist in a permanent flux between bastard unfair and what the actual fuck is happening, with it finding an all-new level of ridiculous that I shall simply call the "oh fuck this game" territory on regular occasions. Usually when I'm passed at the finish line, while in the crucial third place by the fucking AI deciding to go 10 times the speed of light at the last second just to piss me off. The difficulty has been ramped up massively from the original, both in terms of the complexity of the tracks and the rubber banding system to keep the race competitive. The AI controlling the opponent cars has morphed into a completely hammered 19-year-old bloke in a knockoff Armani t-shirt and a gold chain stumbling outside the nightclub at 3 AM and desperately trying to start a fight in a kebab shop because of how someone looked at him. And by that I mean it's like super aggressive. Not only that, there's still pop-in issues, and while not as bad as Cruis'n USA, there's occasions where the AI opponent cars are ahead of you and the track they're driving on hasn't even rendered, so they look like they're floating in fucking mid-air. The game seems to pick and choose which pieces of terrain are okay to drive through and which ones make you have a colossal accident. The trophy girl from the arcade hasn't just had a t-shirt put on her to cover her cleavage, nope, she's been completely dumped from the N64 version. Even the woman waving the flag at the start of the race has been unceremoniously kicked out from the party too. And to top it all off, the kangaroos in the Australia stage are absolutely impossible to run over, taunting you from a distance as they happily bounce and boing over the road. It seems that the critics mostly kicked the shit out of this one too. I mean, admittedly not quite as hard as they did with USA, but it still got a lot of criticism. For performance, for longevity, for controls. And while many of the criticisms are valid to a degree, they missed a super crucial thing in their analysis of this game. Just how much fucking fun there is to have. I don't care that it's stupid. I don't care the handling is more sensitive than my wife watching a TV show about poorly animals. I don't care about how crap the collision detection is, how violent the AI is, how much popping there is, or even which trophy girls they cut out. Cruis'n World is an absolute blast to play. Just the Cruis'n World mode alone, there's now so many more cars, some of which actually do feel slightly different to control, although that may just be me wanting them to feel different. There's 14 tracks taking inspiration from around the world, all of which seem to play exactly the sort of stereotypical cars we would expect an arcade game for the mid-1990s to play. A level in China? Ah, fuck it, make them drive on the Great Wall. Australia? Chuck some kangaroos in. France? The Eiffel Tower and some cheesy Europop music. It's all entirely predictable and, to be honest, pretty childish. But I love that about it. A game that clearly doesn't want to be taken seriously. After all, it's an arcade game. It's designed by nature to suck you in and get you pumping quarters into it. The N64 Port feels more faithful to its arcade machine than Cruis'n USA did, in my opinion. Even side-by-side comparisons show that while the N64 Port may not quite hit the heights of the arcade machine in terms of polygon counts, it does a bloody good job. The frame rate is definitely better than USA, and the pop-in is way less jarring, making better use of the fog effect than Cruis'n USA. In fact, I think the pop-in on the N64 version is actually better than in the arcade version. The music is a million times better than Cruis'n USA, and is also way more accurate to the arcade, though in mono rather than in stereo. But what the developers Eurocom got right here, even more so than the Cruis'n USA port by Leyland, is the replay factor. After I made my Cruis'n USA video, I spent many more hours playing it to unlock everything, and compete against some of my times. Cruis'n World is a colossal port compared to the arcade machine. More cars than the arcade, a bunch of unlockables, as well as the Cruis'n World Tour mode from the arcade, and the individual races you can do from that. There's also a championship mode which turns courses into circuits where you can race through to earn car upgrades. The multiplayer has gone from 2-player on USA to 4-player on World, and while I haven't played it myself, I can see from other playthroughs that it actually looks and runs pretty well. And there's always a self-competitive leaderboard to compete with too. While I compared Cruis'n USA to Outrun, to Ridge Racer, to Daytona USA, because I kind of got that vibe from it, Cruis'n World I didn't find myself doing that at all. Sure, I drew comparisons to Cruis'n USA, of course, but this felt like an evolution of something. It's like Nirvana going away from the grimy basement sounds of Bleach to going, fucking have this with Nevermind. A game that took what it got right from its first iteration and turned the volume right up on the things it knew it did well. It feels like a game that knew at the time the limitations of its own platform, and rather than pretend to be something it isn't, it just focused on accentuating the positives that it had. In my book, Cruis'n World is better than Cruis'n USA in every aspect. The cars, the tracks, the content, the graphics, the performance, the gameplay, the presentation. Sure, it's definitely harder than Cruis'n USA. The tracks themselves are more challenging, let alone the opponent AI being so much more aggressive. And despite how incredibly frustrating and downright bastard unfair I found some of it to be, it was still monumentally good fun to play. It felt rewarding. I feel like there was a bit more skill involved to be good at this one, and I've already found myself getting super competitive with my own times. Simple things like the ability to do a wheelie and essentially dodge an opponent car slamming into you is great when you can pull it off, as well as the frankly ridiculous tricks over ramps you can do by boosting as you hit them. Like I said, the game is fucking stupid. But it's the very best kind of fucking stupid. And if you have any nostalgia or any interest of any kind in classic point-to-point arcade racing, I would highly recommend that you play this. Because, just like the people in the comments told me, it is fucking marvellous. Thanks again for watching. Like before, I have uploaded my full run-through of the Cruis'n World mode from my playthrough, so you can see just how many times I had to settle for a podium rather than first place. As a bonus, I also captured both the arcade version of the France stage and the N64 version of the same stage, which runs side by side. That's at the end of this outro, so stick around if you want to see it, or be on your way if you don't. Before you go, I'd love it if you gave this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and even consider dropping a free subscription to the channel, which will really help me out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Cruis'n World, on Cruis'n USA, or even Cruis'n Exotica. If there's a retro game from any platform that you'd like me to give this retrospective treatment to, let me know in the comments and I might just make it. Until next time, be awesome to each other, and I unconditionally love your hecking faces.
Ready, set, go! Checkpoint! Checkpoint! Whoa! Checkpoint! Ooh la la, Paris! Ready, set, go! Checkpoint! Checkpoint! Moscow rolls! Checkpoint!